Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
To the Late Show with Beejesh, Deva and Claire Bills, a new show where two hosts have combined forces to make what we call an Uber show. Still waiting for Claire to get in. So we've moved to, I've moved to Wednesday night at 8 o'clock to 8 till 9 from Sunday. And we're hoping to kind of bring a different format of a show, more of a talk between me and Claire, hopefully get your views and thoughts on the ideas we're presenting, etc. So welcome. Today, what we're going to do is going to find out about who we are, and kind of me and Claire have met once. Claire, is that you?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, nuts. How are you doing, Claire? You're right.
You? Yes. Sorry. I love technology. Let's get into that later. Love it when you click a link that you've done so many times before, and it just keeps saying log in. Great.
Oh no! I should mention. Shall we mention where you've been today, Claire? Because
yeah, absolutely. I think we should probably just, cards on the table. So I've spent the last 2 days at residential with a wonderful 48-year fours. I managed to get a grand total of about 2 hours sleep last night. Definitely shouldn't be wearing my Apple Watch bedtime residentials. Just thoroughly depressing. So if I'm not entirely with it, that's probably why.
So 40-year fours. Hold on. What is that
48.
age? Just let us know.
Go on.
Let us know what age that is. Like 40-year fours.
Oh, so they're like 8 turning 9.
Oh my goodness. So 2 hours sleep. Where did you go?
So we went to Mount Cook, which is in Matlock, Derbyshire. We spent 2 days being Vikings. It was awesome.
Oh, lovely. That's brilliant.
In the wet and rain and everything that Derbyshire should be.
Did you get in a boat?
Well, you say that. We did make a Viking longship, which we then wheeled around and went plumaging in various settlements to find treasure. So yeah, when I say we were Vikings, I mean it. We dressed up, we did archaeological digs, we had fires, you name it. We were doing rooms. It was awesome.
Helmets?
Yeah. Without horns, obviously.
Swords?
There were swords, there were axes, there were spears.
Oh my goodness. Now I'm jealous.
Yeah, why do you want to do secondary? Come on.
Well, now I'm jealous. I've just been shouting at kids all week. You've been playing Vikings. Great. So I was just before. Did you hear me a bit before? We were. I was just talking about how we've joined forces to make this Uber show.
Yeah. Have you introduced its amazing name that you came up with? I liked it.
It's an amazing name. Remind me.
Oh. I've forgotten.
So what we're discussing today, we're just going to discuss like what we've learned from our previous shows. That's what we've decided today, and kind of what our key learnings, who we are. So we should probably do intros. I'm Beejesh Deva, obviously. I work in a state comp secondary in Salford, and I am a director of science. I've worked in Shanghai before this, and I worked in South Leeds before this, all those exotic places.
And my name is Claire Bill. So I am head teacher at Pierpont Gunston Primary School in Nottingham, and when I'm not being a Viking and causing chaos, I just get the real privilege of leading a really fairly multicultural, mid-size, 310 pupils, primary. It's my second headship. It's a church school, and I am very lucky because I absolutely love the job that I get to do.
Oh, ace. It's great to hear that, isn't it? Because we hear teachers moaning so much about like doing the job and people leaving the profession. It's brilliant to hear people just go, I love this. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall I just jump in with some ads and then we can get started on
go for it, Claire.
So we've got 3 ads tonight. So big thank you to John Catt, who John Catt Educational published some incredible professional development books and resources. If you have never checked them out, highly recommend visiting johncattbookshop.com, and the code JCTTR2425 even gives you a 20% off, nearly up to that discount. I'd have been in trouble there. Definitely just 20% off, but definitely worth checking that out. Also, USA Study gets the opportunity for students to go and study in America. So if that's something that might be of interest, their platform guides students through what they have to do, the college application process, dates, programs, scholarships. Everything is all in one place to access. So check out their website, usastudy.co.uk, and with their amazing slagline, every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study. And finally, the last one, Teachers Talk Connect. So opportunity to join those people who host on Teachers Talk Radio, taking place in Manchester, Saturday the 1st of March. So that's coming around quick. For the biggest free event ever. Loads of brilliant speakers. Mr. P, Lee Parkinson, Kate Jones, Vic Goodard, loads of different subject-specific CPD sessions, brilliant opportunities to network. Tickets are free, teachers and leaders. ttradio.org to get tickets, and I believe you may even be there, Beejesh. Am I right?
Yeah, I might be there in multiple capacities. So you'll see me there, and I'll be in the Science Strand doing a little talk. It's if you've never been to a TTR like event before, it is brilliant. It's such a good day out. Have you been to a TTR event before?
I actually haven't.
Oh, it's mint. It's such a good day out. Like you just kind of hang around, you meet loads of people. There's loads of free stuff as well. There's like little tables with free stuff, and you learn absolute tons because we pack it in. Like literally, it is guest after guest after guest all day. It's a superb day. Really, really good.
Amazing. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's cool. Right. Do you want to should we go into like what TTR shows we've done in the past? And I mean, I'm pretty new to this still. I've only done like 6, but I don't know about you, Claire. How many have you done? Oh, we've lost Claire. She's cut out. All right, well, I've done 6 shows. My shows have been around the idea of building a school which is filled with joy. And I've like explored loads of weird and wonderful things on that little journey. So I started by looking at like kind of school culture and having a school where you could kind of do loads of stuff and kind of like you could do wild and imaginative stuff. I started talking with a couple of guests about that, and then I talked to people about behavior, and I've talked to people about PD, professional development, and then I even finished with like how do you bring joy to schools. So I talked to Dave McPartlin to begin with. He told me about how he brings joy to his school by like dreaming big and having his kids do like kind of quite wild and wonderful things and facilitating that to happen, and having his team helping him do all this, and how he sets the culture of his school, and how he brings like just the joy of coming to a school, to Fleetwood, to his community in Fleetwood, and working with his community, which sometimes have quite big challenges. And it was quite interesting to hear how he does it. You know, he has a big idea, and then he's managed to work a team of people together that can make that happen. And people kind of, you know, have to sometimes temper his expectations, or like just go with it and make it happen. You know, he took his kids on Britain's Got Talent and things like that. And it was quite a cool insight into the fact that, you know, you can become the head of the school, and you can make the school completely different to what it was before, and really think big and work around kind of any kind of challenges that community face, and bring real joy to community and become a hub. You know, there's a coffee shop going with the school. They've got like different spaces where people can go, and they've really changed what they do. They work with loads of people in the community to provide Fleetwood with this kind of hub. Really, they've become a hub of kind of joy in that place, and where people can, you know, work with kids and turn things around and kind of move things forward. It's really interesting to hear that. And then I talked to Khalil Rouse about behavior and pastoral systems, and that was super interesting. Obviously behavior is like that hot topic, isn't it? And Khalil has just got so much experience in terms of that kind of side of things. And it was just really interesting. He talked about restorative justice conversations and how they're done properly, how they might not be done properly. I love the idea of like thinking about what you need in your school in terms of behavior, and then things like even pastoral CPD, the fact that he feels that there isn't a space for pastoral CPD at the moment, and like no one's really driving that. And his hashtag about pastoral CPD that he made, it was the first hashtag about pastoral CPD on Twitter, which is quite interesting really, because I think there isn't, I don't know, when you look at it, when we explored it, we thought, well, actually there isn't that kind of angle on pastoral CPD. There's no angle. You get all the things about safeguarding, you get all the things about like how to keep kids safe, you get the kind of like training on how to deal with big incidents, but just the day to day, there isn't a lot of pastoral around, CPD around for pastoral, about how to manage the day to day, how to get on top of the behavior in terms of low level, how to have those conversations with kids, how to like stop long conversations with kids that take up time, and then you have to process them and move them on. There's not a lot of CPD around that, and I thought that was quite a cool idea, the idea that we should kind of swing towards pastoral CPD, and also things like getting trained up for parents' evenings and dealing with parents, etc. I think that was a really, really interesting show that really brought loads of things to light. My background is not pastoral, my background is academic, and we have a big focus on academic. But what he raised was something quite powerful, which is, if we can get that behavior side of things correct, and we can really have a CPD program which drives excellent behavior management and pastoral management and safeguarding, then those things will take care of themselves, and academic has got a chance to shine, and the two play hand in hand with each other. And then we moved on. We had Adam Robbins about middle leadership, which was like really, really interesting, because obviously being a middle leader myself, I learned a fair bit from Adam, and I was super interested in what Adam had to say about like self-determination theory. I should mention that all of these people dropped culture. All the 6 guests that I've had dropped culture into the conversation on every show, which is quite an interesting idea. My thoughts on culture, I don't know. Sometimes I think I've been on leadership courses, and culture always features quite heavily, but all of these people were talking about culture slightly differently, in a rather than in a broad, vague kind of way, where in this big idea leadership kind of way, they kind of discussed it in more of a micro kind of way, which then led to this macro thing that we call culture. And all of them said this. All of them were really, really thinking about the key details about what goes on in their organizations, and then like thinking about how that informed their culture, which I find really, really interesting. I think there is there's that phrase, isn't there? Culture eats strategy for breakfast, which was I find really interesting, and like it was really interesting to hear these guys, and actually they talked more about the strategy, which then developed their culture. It was quite interesting to hear that from literally all 6 of the guests. Everyone mentioned culture, but they talked heavily about strategy informing culture. Should we see if Claire's back? Claire, are you back? No, she's not. That's fine. I can take this. So we talked about that, and then in Adam's talk, he talked. We spent a long time, and I wish I could have spent like almost another hour with Adam. Obviously, that was just from a middle leader perspective, but we talked about kind of how we find out who we've got on our team, and how people are thinking in the way they are moving through their careers, and how we kind of like facilitate the feedback for them, and how we kind of think about whether they're team focused, whether they're child focused, whether they're like kind of focused in a different way in terms of their careers, and how we can shift that kind of focus for them. And I also quite liked what we talked about in terms of QA, and it stuck me for a while, QA being a 4-letter word, and I had to mull it over. And then Claire, you there?
Oh, well, I'm just going to try and jump back in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I got you.
Thank goodness. I could hear you, but every time I tried to speak, it just wasn't having any of it. So I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't worry. I was just going through my shows, what I've
Yeah,
learned
yeah,
from
yeah.
them.
No, and
And
honestly, I just think it's amazing, and I love the coherence that you had through all your shows. That level of joy just ran through them, and I think, like for me, that is such an important part of my why and why I do what I do. And my
yeah,
shows previously, I think, have all been about starting from things that I know.
yeah,
So I started like as a head of a small school 7 years ago, and I'd never worked in a small school before. I started my career in a really large inner city school, three form entry, 900 children, and then before I know it, there were 98 children in my school. um, but but actually, the things that don't change are if you lead from your vision and you lead from your why and you get it right, you want to bring about the best possible opportunities for the children in your school and your why. So I've done shows where I've worked with different school leaders, those who've stepped away because of some of the challenges, and we've thought
okay,
about, well, what are the challenges in education right now? What is it that's meaning people are finding that actually this just isn't a place where they can be and they can flourish? Looked at maths, because that was a massive
yeah,
part of what I did, and brought and changed kind of, and that concept of like a mastery curriculum, but also I guess for us what the implications of that beyond maths, right? We talk
yeah,
about mastery maths in primary quite a lot, certainly, and breaking everything down to those small steps to get it right, to give children those building blocks. But we kind of go, actually, what would a mastery curriculum look like? What if we took that much wider than just maths to enable
yeah,
every child to be successful in that way? So getting that curriculum right, talked about SEN and the challenges that schools are facing in terms of that massive rise across the country. Did a show just before the election in that eve,
oh yeah,
thinking
yeah,
about what 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 could be, what the future is. And in some ways, it's a little bit frustrating to look back because that was a time of quite a lot of hope and
yeah,
anticipation. I think
yeah,
there was a moment in time when it was like the education kind of I say industry, that's not the right word, kind of group, I guess, almost collectively held their breath over, hang on a minute, are we going to get this right this time? And,
yeah, yeah,
maybe we can discuss later how that's going.
yeah.
But
Well,
also,
let's jump on
go on
it.
then.
So frustrating. That's an
Yeah,
interesting
that's the
word,
word.
isn't it? Go on, Claire. Go on. Let's unpack that.
Oh gosh. Well, so I think where there's various things, isn't there? You get a new education sector, and we've
Yeah,
gone through a few. I think there's now a
yeah,
top trumps, isn't there, and all sorts of
yeah,
these things that have come because we went through so many. And then finally, you get someone who sounds and makes the right noises, like they're going to listen, they're going
yeah,
to work with professions, they want to value it. But then more and more, you feel like, is this just lip service?
yeah,
Is this just a situation where, again, we've got someone who's got their own agenda, who's coming in, who wants to make changes, who's not really listening to teaching unions, certainly not listening to the kind of profession itself, who are so desperate for the radical change that we need in our education system. And yet
yeah,
it feels like they're tinkering around the edges or tweaking things in unexpected ways. And I think probably the same is true for Ofsted. And I think there's probably
yeah.
this frustration and disappointment that comes from those two things. People saying, yeah, we're going to listen, and then having all these period of time and consultations, then coming back and going, yeah, let's just do what we think parents might like. Let's not worry
Yeah.
about what school leaders really know. I've
I'm
been to
not gonna lie
school.
to you. I was a little bit apprehensive with the rumblings to begin with,
Okay.
and actually because look, I don't know where it's different from secondary, right? I have really enjoyed the move away from. I trained like 15 years ago, right? And we were throwing stuff around in classrooms. We were like edutainers,
Okay.
and I feel that the last 14 years worth of reform have moved away from that really in a really really nice way, and I often say, like, look, because I was what they used to call an outstanding teacher, Claire, right?
Congratulations.
And that's what I was, right? And I used to get observed, and I used to like basically do big flashes and bang science teacher, right? Or and we used to play games, and we used to have information hunts and things like this, and then the kids used to open their papers on results day, their envelopes on results day, and there used to be awful grades in there. Really really bad grades. They'd learn nothing, And like used to wonder what was going on, what exactly was going on. And obviously the reforms in education and the move towards like curriculum thinking and things like that, I was really happy with, because like I quite
Yeah, I get it.
it,
No, I get it. I think
yeah.
there's definitely been positives in terms of
And I was really
mindset.
worried we were on our way back from that. I was really worried we were on the way towards like, edutainment, get them in the schools and like just do juggling for them or something like that, and like etc. and move away from knowledge rich and stuff like that. And
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalised timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271, because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
And I was a bit worried, I'm not going to lie to you, but with the consultation, the more and more I've heard about it, it like you said, I think the tinkering around the edge is what I'm a little bit happy with, because but then I heard her on another podcast a couple of days ago saying how good Michael Gove was, like actually singing his praises, and I was like, this is really interesting. So
do you not think though she's just trying to win everyone over? And then maybe this is me being a little bit, pessimistic. Like, I know there's a whole group of teachers there that really like this knowledge rich stuff, and Michael Gove, for all that he brought, absolutely brought rigor back to a curriculum, absolutely raised the expectations. And in primary we will never go back in terms of what is now anticipated and expected. When I was training and started teaching, we had national numeracy strategy, national literature strategy in primary, and it set out really clearly what you taught when. And the idea was that no matter what classroom you were in the entire country, everyone would be doing the same thing. I mean, that failed. But like the concept of what you were teaching. And if you look back now in terms of our expectation for children at what they're doing now compared to what they were doing at that strategy time, it has come on massively. Now, for better or worse, I might say, the amount that we have to cover is so immense that, I often talk to secondary teachers. I'm like, if we were to do a little bit less, but make sure every child had really cracked this, might that not be more helpful than us filling them with these huge amounts of bodies of knowledge that they're just not going to retain, which means secondaries have to kind of start again because they haven't got that consistency of all children knowing the basics that they need. Anyway.
It's an interesting one. Like I don't know. I'm watching it with like one eye kind of squinted, trying to figure out what the landscape's going to look like in the next 2 or 3 years. But yeah, I don't know. Part of me was a bit like, if we go back to edutainment, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. Because number one, like it's just really hard when you put that much effort into something, and the kids don't give them the keys to the doors, and that's where it was really, really difficult for me, like, and you think you're doing a great job as well. And this is what I found on my journey. Like I said, like I think, if you were asked me why people are leaving the profession, you could say behavior, you could say admin, you could say this, that, the other, but I think I boil it down to the fact that sometimes you can go into work and you can leave at the end of the day and go, was I any use today? Right. And all of those things like add up to that question at the end of the day. Did kids learn anything in my lesson? When the behavior is terrible, you leave at the end of the day, you go, oh, bloody hell, five lessons. And I was just dealing with behavior for 40 minutes of every lesson. I don't think I taught anything today. And you don't feel like you've done a good job at the end of the day. And that's kind of in all these shows, that's how I found my why as a leader as well. Like, it's my job to make sure people walk out at the end of the day going, I've done a good job. And the kids walk out at the end of the day going, we've done a good job today, you know. And then at the end of it all, everyone knows they've done a good job. And I think that's what's most frustrating. I think for me, maybe in this career, like you can work 50, 60, 70 hours and still not get the results that you were after and make the change that you got into the job for. Do you know what I mean? And I think,
No,
and then
I do. And
that
but
filters
it's
down.
interesting because you start by saying, actually, how do I bring joy in? And actually,
Yeah.
I think what's good is you then going, this isn't about edutainment. This isn't about it being cons. This is about bringing joy through a deeper, richer knowledge. Yeah. Like, so
Yeah.
if you get the curriculum right, the children will enjoy what they're doing. But they will have a genuine enjoyment that comes from a deeper understanding, which means they then go on and retain it and can use it. And that
Yes.
they've got something they can take away, right?
Yeah, that's kind of where the joy is, I think. You know, that
Yeah.
this where kids walking out with like with just equipped with knowledge and like just and able to apply it and able to kind of do like access all of the wonderful things that I'm so lucky to access due to my education. Do you know what I mean? Like that's where it comes from. It's quite and that's real joy. Do you know, like if we wanted to, I say this quite often. If I wanted to entertain kids, I'd work for Netflix and probably make more money for less effort. Like,
yeah, well, go on to TV education. Yeah, be good fun. I feel like I need to caveat a quote, by the way, just quickly, because I've just seen Teachers Talk Radio put it. Is is the education secretary Bridget Phillipson, is she just trying to win everyone over? I feel like she caveat it with, if she is, she might not be massively successfully currently, like, because it sounds like I'm saying she's doing a really good job and everyone loves her. Like, I just wonder if sometimes some of the sound bites seem almost a little bit contradictory. Is what I really meant by that in terms of, yeah. But I just feel we should probably just clarify it. But anyway,
I mean, it's like it's interesting. It is interesting. I mean, look, I think hopefully we get a happy medium. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we'll move through. And it seems like, I hearing on the podcast the other day and hearing her interviews and stuff like that. It's not like, you know, she's listening. She is listening to some people, but I mean the issue is which voices are loudest, and that's with social media platforms, etc., etc., etc. Like who's loudest? I think that's a difficult one, isn't it? I know who she should be listening to, which is the people at the job face on a day-to-day basis. Because in the end, those guys, like, everyone who's in a classroom is dealing with like that day-to-day kind of, with the day-to-day of it all. And in the end, they're the ones who make the biggest change and bring the biggest joy, really. You know, like, and I feel like as leaders, it's our job to like make sure that we're giving them the tools to do that, you know, and giving them the space to do that. And so I think if maybe you use that sort of thinking to inform changes, that would be an amazing thing, wouldn't it?
Oh no, and there's got to still be that potential, and I think we sometimes still have to hold on to the hope that there is still time and there is still opportunity, because actually if we really thought it was hopeless, we'd just step away. Like, you can't live each day walking into a kind of place that doesn't have that. And sometimes as school leaders, I think part of our job is to maybe shield a little bit from some people the impact of these changes, right? Like, if you doing what you're doing because it's the right thing, not because it's the latest fad or it's the latest thing for Ofsted. I think that's the real crux of it sometimes for me, is that what will we carry on doing because it was the right thing to do by the children in our school, by the kind of community that we live with, rather than the things we were doing because we knew it was on a checklist, or we didn't want to be caught out because someone comes and asks our children and they can't articulate really clearly what that meant to them, and we know that's really important to the kind of latest inspection team or buzzwords. You know, I know one school leader who I spoke to previously who sadly was incredibly inspiring. You know, I think it's really sad when those people you build a relationship with and see and look up to and know they're doing a really good job go, do you know, I can't do this anymore, because her inspection was heavily focused on whether the children were able to articulate what was meant by protected characteristics. And I am not saying that protected characteristics are not important. Don't hear me wrong. Like, I think it is really important that children have that understanding of them. But is it the most important thing? And if, you know, you put a 7, 8, 9-year-old on the spot and you don't clarify, and you don't expand and go, oh, do you think it's right if people were treated differently because of X, Y, Z? You just use a buzz phrase that adults talk about and expect children to be able to apply and reason and explain what this means. And remember, in primary, these are young children who are desperate to please because they just want adults to do well, and at the point they go, oh, well, has there been anything where anyone's ever said anything like this? Like, oh, I don't know. What's the right thing to say? Is it to say yes? Is it to say no? Because they just get so trapped in this mentality. And suddenly your inspection's falling apart because children don't know something about something.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's one example, I guess, where you go, if it's the right thing, it's the right thing. And you've built it into your culture and your assemblies or worships, whatever you call them. And therefore it will stay and have that lasting impact. If it was only something you ever did for Ofsted, it's a display that might slowly disappear. But there's nothing in the latest Ofsted toolkits, they call them now, don't they, about that, for example, because it was just one of the things that stood out to us as a senior leadership team when we were looking through. British values have gone very quiet as protected characteristics.
See, I'm quite when it comes to this sort of thing, I don't know, throughout the whole, I live my life scientifically, right? It sounds really clinical, doesn't it? And I'm a science teacher and I'm like obsessed with it. So when my approach to assessment is quite scientific, I'm just designing an experiment where we draw some conclusions at the back end of it and then see how valid those conclusions were, right? And we look at it and we were really, really honest about the limitations of the conclusions we make, right? So, and the data that we've used to inform those conclusions. That's the way I see it, right? So if you walk into a school and you ask 4 kids what are protected characteristics, and they can't tell you that, right? And then you conclude that this school isn't teaching protected characteristics effectively. Well, you have to be honest about how rubbish that conclusion was, right? And you have to be, do you know what I mean? You have to be honest, and you can't write something indelibly, in like print if you and say like it's concrete if like you ask 5 kids and they couldn't tell you and you haven't explored any other pieces of information to triangulate that, you haven't talked to teachers, do you know what I mean? Like in essence, I know it sounds really clinical, I know it sounds like really bean countery, but I don't know, I think I might be for a little bit more bean countering bean counting in inspection. Do you know what I mean? Like, because otherwise, like, people can just draw conclusions left, right, and center. You look
and
at
I think that's what's happening though. Genuinely, it feels what's happened. And so when I was in at small school, we had 4 classes in our school, and we had 2 inspectors in for one day. They are so limited in what they can see and what they can draw from those conclusions and what it means. And literally one child can say one thing and suddenly you're going off down this tangent going, can we just backtrack actually? But there's almost so little time to gain that evidence and to do those things. Someone sent me a really interesting quote which seems like it's leading into exactly what you've just said. So it's from Michael Rose, and it says, first they said they needed data about the children to find out what they were learning. Then they said they needed data about the children to make sure they were learning. Then the children only learnt what could be turned into data. And then the children became the data. And I just thought, that's just quite an interesting reflection.
But look, that's the flip side of what I'm saying, right? Because,
It's interesting, right?
Yeah, but poor science is done like everywhere in schools, right? Everywhere. You see it with collection of assessment data, right? Like, think about the last piece of assessment data that you collected. Did you ask a question before you collected that data, right? What was there, like in a good science experiment, you make a hypothesis and then you test that hypothesis by collecting data about it, right? You don't just collect data and then ask. Well, sometimes you do, but then you need a hypothesis before you ask the data questions. Instead, what we do is we collect data and then make spurious conclusions because the data wasn't designed to answer the questions that we wanted to ask.
Now that's interesting.
And, yeah, I mean, this is what I learned from Deep when I talked to him about like joy in assessment. Right, we collect data, we don't ask it questions. We precipitate, like Deep said about we then start these games, because kids play games with assessment data, and so do adults, right? They play games with the data, and they try and game it, and they try and, like, because obviously you want to see some sort of improvement, impact, and then suddenly you make these spurious conclusions. And what happened is the data wasn't designed to make those conclusions, and you have had to retrofit your data around the conclusions that you wanted to make. And so there's like a whole heap of bias involved and stuff like that, you know. So it sounds like really, like, you know, that's the flip side of it. We just collect data for the sake of data, and then like we try and draw conclusions from like pretty much rubbish experiments. Like it would be madness, you know, to say, oh well, we collected rain all year every day.
So
you know,
therefore
like,
it must rain, all the time.
yeah.
But
Do
you
you
know,
know,
it's interesting because that's where I feel like we've gone with this concept of wider curriculum assessment in primary. And don't get me wrong, I don't know what that's like in secondary. I do think it's different when each subject is assessed in its own way. So if you are doing history because you're going to do a history GCSE, and therefore you need to build a bank of evidence for your coursework or to cover the curriculum, I think that's different. But in primary, where your national curriculum's got like 5 or 6 bullet points, you know, for each area, and that's what you need to cover. The concept of, you just are constantly weighing the pig. You're never actually building on it or looking at it or going, right, well, if they haven't got that, what do I need to do next? And that's definitely been Ofsted driven, you know, because when I started teaching, we didn't really assess the wider curriculum. We marked it, we gave feedback, we helped children to reflect on where they're at and where they were going next. And we didn't use the same words in terms of the CPD that we do now, in terms of, you know, reflective practices, practice and retrieval. We didn't use any of that terms, but we started most lessons by going, right, what can we remember from the previous lessons? And we just like constantly would reflect that and hear that and things without
it sounds super formative, right? What you were doing, it's actually formative.
It was massively formative, exactly. But then there came this kind of Ofsted drive to be able to, how do you pin that down though? We need something summative to go on that. And I mean, people start talking to me, and I see on social media, oh, we'll get APP back. I mean, literally, APP was probably the death of me as a teacher, and never may it come back in my school ever. But like, it's then led to this kind of world where we just collect more and more data for absolutely no purpose, just so that we could say this child is working at expected in year 5 RE or year 3 music. It's meaningless. Those things do not exist. And yet the need to clarify and pretend that they do has led us down some really rocky paths.
Yeah, I'm going to look. The grids give me nightmares at night. The APP grids that I used to have to do, and having like 30 APP grids and walking around a science class. It was like, it brings me anxiety now as I speak about it. But actually, I'm going to defend it one little bit.
Oh, go on. This will be fun.
Well, in science, we had like these 7 APP strands, right? And actually, it was really interesting as a teacher just to understand the progression through them. Do you know, like through the knowledge and kind of like through each strand, it was really interesting to think about what it looked like just from that perspective. So even if you didn't agree with all of the descriptors, like it was just really interesting to hold that in your mind and think about, like, even if you weren't assessing the kids, but like you'd kind of think about, well, what's next for this person? Or do you know, like that was it was actually really usely as like a planning tool, as a progression tool, as a progression. Do you know what I mean?
Did you have capacity to do that?
No.
I get
What
the
I
idea
did
as a principle, as a thought, but
yeah.
then the reality of when you, I don't know, maybe you didn't have to do it for every child. We used to have like focus children, and so that every child was on a cycle. The whole thing became absolutely mad. But
that's what we're supposed to do. Look, I accidentally got involved. I was early on in my career. This is about 3 years into my career, and I accidentally got involved in making these grids kids speak. I ended up doing that. Yeah, head of department left, and so I ended up like getting dragged into like making these grids kids speak, and like kind of working with these grids. And actually what I learned from working with these grids was to think about how the knowledge progressed, I mean, nowadays, look, we're going back. I probably don't agree with the idea, because we were still back when like you just had skills. You know, remember we just taught skills.
Yeah.
And you could do that if you just had the skill. You could do anything, could you? You know, like, and these vacuous ideas of skill, and like, hang on a second, how do they actually develop these skills? You just practice them in isolation of any content, and then suddenly expect them to apply them somewhere in a different context. But like in terms of a couple of the threads, I was like, oh, that's really interesting, because like we had the scientific, the knowledge strand. Actually, they had a knowledge strand and talked about what they could do with the knowledge, and it hasn't changed that much, to be honest with you. As you go, it hasn't changed my thinking massively. You gain the knowledge, and then essentially you can apply it in a variety of different contexts, and then you can explain new things, and and things like that. And those APP grids were kind of formative in my thinking about how that knowledge would progress in my subject. But I wasn't going around colouring them in for each child. That was madness. That was just,
I mean, where
insane.
we get to now in the kind of wider curriculum things is that we pause partway through our topic, right? And we do that kind of mini assessment to see where they're at, where they're going, what do they know, what haven't I taught well enough, and let's do that again. If like a decent proportion of your class are not got something, we need to look at this in a different way before we can move on. And I mean, in a way, that kind of comes back to this concept of mastery for me, because actually you only move on when you've got that kind of critical, at least 80% of the children with you got that understanding, that to be able to go on to the next step in order for them to get to where you want them to ultimately be, because we primary love a good kind of, we used to be in a place where all outcomes were kind of posters and just let children show what they've learned and things. And there's absolutely a place for children being able to have freedom, flexibility to show what they're passionate about, but not in replacement of high quality knowledge being valued and respected, and knowing that actually our job as professionals is to get children to a place where they've got the knowledge that they need to be able to use and apply it in different contexts, and to be able to take that learning on wherever they go, whether that's further up within the same school or into different schools moving on.
That's what I saw like a Twitter post the other day of someone who'd like a school down south who'd produced this, someone in their class had produced this wonderful bit of text which clearly showed the knowledge. Like it was beautiful, it was really, really cool. And I was just like, how do we get that? Do you know what I mean? Like where a child being able to write about respiration and link it to like loads and loads, linked it to breathing, linked it about circulatory system, and it was beautiful. It was just such a good, it was exactly what we want our kids to be able to do. Do you know what I mean? And one of the things that like kind of I love about science is you can look at something and go, oh yeah, that's that, and this is this because of that, and you can apply that knowledge, and it's be wonderful to get our kids to that point, rather than like spending time just assessing them and assess them again and assess them again and assess them. I think I like this idea of not weighing the pig. I think I do. Weighing the pig. Sometimes you do. It's nice.
Oh, you need to know. Yeah.
It's nice.
Done, and you've done well, and 100%.
It's nice, but not weighing the pig every day. And also, look, I've got an idea. I'm going to run this by you. It might form a part of something I'll do later on in a few months, right? But I reckon there are 5 reasons why learners need feedback. 5 reasons. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Number 1, they didn't listen. Number 2, they forgot. Number 3, the explanation was unclear. Number 4, there's no retrieval cue for them to like bring that knowledge back, or it's like quite a sharp retrieval cue which only retrieves it in a small context. And number 5, there was a poor prerequisite knowledge, which means that child just couldn't attach the knowledge anywhere in the brain, like in terms of into their schematic knowledge. So those are the 5 things, right? And I'm like obsessed with that at the moment. I'm obsessed with this idea that like there's these 5 things going on. Do you know what I mean?
So let me push back a little bit then.
Go on.
Because I would suggest there's maybe a 6th, which is that there will be children in every single classroom who, because of everything that's going on in their life, even if you did all of those things, are just not in a place to learn.
Not in a place to learn. Expand.
So yeah, and I guess part of this is you take right. You take children away and outside of their comfort zones and you put them into a totally alien environment like I have. And you see children just being children, right? And it is wonderful.
Yeah.
And where we went to this Viking, we basically threw them in because when they come back after half term, their entire topic is going to be about Vikings. And so they came with no real prior knowledge, and they have
Right.
left after 2 days full of a whole range of facts and information that they've explored, they've lived, they've poured out.
Yeah.
But some children, so they've all had this same experience. They've all had really high quality history, people who love history, right? Which is why the reason they're doing the jobs that they're doing. And I've been so impressed by the quality of the people who've come alongside us to do this, because they've all just delivered it in such a way that shows that they are really passionate about it, which I love. And for loads of our children, and generally our children are from a pretty good fairly middle class area, that they've absorbed it like sponges, and they could probably tell you more facts than you ever wanted to know. And I'm hoping that they go home and bore their parents rigid with information that they've learned, which we can then build on, right? Because then what a great starting point for us for the next half term, right? In terms of if that's where we're coming from, because we can really put some context on some of the things they've learned and develop it. But for some children, because of everything that's going on in their life, we could give them, and this is so important for these children to have had this, but what they're going to take away from it is going to be much more limited. And that's not because I'm limiting them, because I think they've still got exactly the same potential. But if their kind of basic psychological, physical needs are not being met because their life experience is different, I could do all those things you talked about and I can constantly be providing and supporting them. But for some, that's just going to be a much bigger challenge. And I guess I'm talking about our disadvantaged children here. And how do we bridge that gap? Because we know that gap is growing. And how do we put in place some of those things you've talked about with perhaps a different slant to go? And how do we give for those who've got the hardest starting point in life that opportunity?
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, so I don't know, like something like didn't listen. Like you've got, like I've got attention management strategies in my classroom and things like that. But I mean, like you say, this is interesting. If they're not in a place to learn, let's go down the hierarchy of needs, right?
Yeah. Well, is it didn't listen or is it can't listen? Because I'm too worried because actually before I came to school, I overheard my carer and someone else having this issue. And now all I'm thinking about is, what am I going to go home to? Do you know what I mean? Like, so it displays as didn't listen. Yeah. But is it something deeper than that? We're getting slightly off topic, and I get that.
No, but that's interesting. But it's interesting though, like because it's worth thinking about. Is this why? Because I would say this is the reason why the majority of learners kind of don't learn what you want them to. Do you know what I mean? But then, like, what do you? Is it acceptable to go? They weren't in a place to learn. Do you know what I mean? And this is what I struggle with. Like, is it acceptable they weren't in a place to learn today? Like, and like, what is it okay? Is that what we're here for? Do you know what I mean? And it is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It is what we're here for. But like, how do we? So then there must be a mechanism here that we could like things like if you go down the hierarchy, and you like say if there's no safety there for that child, or maybe they just haven't had anything to eat, and they've got really low blood glucose levels, which means that like attention is really, really taking up a lot of their energy. Like, what is the? Do you know what I mean? Like, as a classroom teacher, where are you at now? Do you know what I mean? Is it okay to stand and go, well, not in a place to learn today, are they? But this is quite important knowledge, and so where do we go on this one? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's quite it's quite an interesting
battle, right? It's a constant battle, and it's a battle that we put on ECTs and experienced teachers. You know, like that
Yeah.
everyone has to go and it. You know, I was having a really good conversation with a support assistant, a learning support assistant, in terms of sometimes the behaviour that a child is displaying is because actually they can't communicate their need, and sometimes it is definitely an unmet need, and how you handle that and what a potential consequence or not might be is very different when you know a child is fully regulated and making a poor choice. And actually the skill is being able to look and go, right, do I need to be able to meet this child's need differently? Because actually this is just something that they're not in a place, they're not regulated, they're not able to access this, they're not able to deal with this right now, and actually they just need love and compassion, and for me to find a different way to support them, and we'll get there a different way. Or
This is
do I know this child well enough to know that actually they're just messing around now, and actually I do need a consequence. They do need to learn that actually that's not okay.
Well, like you say, we get ECTs to do this business, and this is where Khalil was really interested when he said like hashtag pastoral CPD. Like this is something that you're just not well. When I was doing it, you're just not. You're taught to manage behaviour, right? You're not taught to diagnose behaviour.
Nope.
You're not taught to look at the signs where like maybe the hierarchy of needs lower down haven't been fulfilled, or you are, but from a safeguarding perspective. But not from a day-to-day, like this child's in my classroom perspective. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not taught to look out for that, and you're not taught how to manage that. And really, we don't have concrete answers on how. I know it's difficult, but like there's not many concrete answers on how to manage that. Like where do we go here? Like what you're clearly in this position this morning, and like you've turned up, like this has happened with a child. Like where do we go next? What's my flow chart, right? What's my flow chart here? Like, like we don't explicitly teach that to ECTs, and they have to kind of figure it out for themselves, and then they make mistakes. Those mistakes have massive impacts for those individuals who are involved. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not for the
but
ECT
also,
over the course.
You're right. No, but for that ECT, if we're talking pastoral CPD, it can have a massive impact on them emotionally, because they're constantly having to balance that juggle of when is the right thing to do, or what is the right thing to do, and you know, I've never come across this before, and what does that look like? It's hard.
So it's really interesting, like, and it'd be interesting to see what that looked like. You know, we now get so much academic CPD. Do you know, there's so much out there. You just have to Google CPD and you get CPD on how to do retrieval effectively, how to do explicit instruction, how to do synthetic phonics. Do you know what I mean? You get loads. But when it comes to like how to diagnose behavior, what flowchart that you use and things like that, we're kind of like a little bit, there's not as much there. Do you know what I mean? And I know, like when I was taught, it's not quite there. And I know you're taught to manage behavior. You're not taught to kind of like pick this up. So yeah, maybe this is one to add to the list. Maybe it's 6.
I was wondering that.
I don't think I've got a solution for that.
No.
For others, I might do, and I won't go any further than that. For the others, I might do, but I don't think I've got a solution for not in a place to learn, other than we probably need to, go and talk to our pastoral leader, or something along those lines, or maybe just kindness.
Well, that's what I was going to come to. Is this all about relationship ultimately? Is this about the relationship that the adult builds with the child, that means that they are trusted, that means that actually they get to a place where they can be honest about what's going on, and that actually school becomes a safe place where with that person they are able to not let go of, but get to a place where they can learn despite or in addition to, because they know that actually what's going on isn't going to change, but what they can control at this time in this place is that actually they can engage in this, and this is something they're interested in. They actually want to develop their knowledge in this area because they know this is going to be useful. And some days that might not be possible, but a lot of the time, with the right relationship and the right investment in that child, it is possible to get to a place where they are able to learn and to listen. but they have to feel safe, and they have to that's the basics. They have to feel safe, and they have to feel known, and they have to feel cared for.
You nailed it when you said trust, right? Because I'm not gonna lie, the relationship thing sometimes gets my back up. It really does, right? Because it means different things to different people, right? Like you have teachers who are like, oh, you need to build a relationship with them. I know what football team they support, and I know, what colours they've got on their bed and all that business, because I know, and you go, hang on a second, like I've got like 32 kids, 6 times a day, 5 times a day, like and to be honest with you, the relationship I want is, it needs to be professional, it needs to be learning focused, do you know what I mean? But I think this is the key when it comes to relationships. You said it, it's that trust angle. I want kids to trust me and trust that I've got their best interests in mind. I don't particularly want kids to I don't particularly want kids to go, oh yeah, I like Mr. I don't want kids to like me even. Do you know what I mean? I want them to trust me and go, right, he will do what I need. Right, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
he will give me what I need, and he's making decisions that are for me. And I think this is what we forget sometimes when and that's another thing that we don't really get a lot of training on, developing that trust between kids. And when it only takes 1 or 2 incidences where a child's lost trust in you, and you have to learn quite quickly how to do it, and you either learn quickly or you've just lost that child.
Yeah, and I think certainly in primary, the same is true of parents. You have to build that relationship with them so that they trust you enough to back you. That if their child comes home and says something like, oh, that's not what I would anticipate or expect, to push back, to kind of say, yeah, do you know what? We've got you. Because actually, when we get that right, that families and children and teachers, that kind of triangle, that's when powerful things happen. That's when we can really work together and make the difference, whether that's attendance, whether that's academics, whether that's SEN even. And sometimes, often for those parents, even more, because they feel like they're constantly fighting a system that doesn't perhaps suit their children. But if we get it right, that gives us the best possible chance of success to move forward.
It's hard, isn't it? It's harder, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe it is harder, and maybe we should pick this up on the next show, right? Is it harder now to build trust with parents and learners? Like, I think that's an interesting question to ask. Do you know what I mean? Like, with the breakdown in the social contract, etc. Like, what does it look like to build trust? Because look, I looked at BBC yesterday, and I saw an article literally fed to the BBC by the parent. My child got detention for not getting 90% in maths, right? and that's the sort of article that's coming out, right?
Yeah.
So and that encapsulates the breakdown in the social contract between schools and parents and society, right? And it might be interesting to pick that up. Is it harder to build trust between the stakeholders in schools today than it was maybe 20 years ago? Maybe
I think there's probably a lot to unpick there, isn't there? I think that sounds great for another show. Yeah.
Do we need to do another set of ads, Claire?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, let me do these because time has whizzed by.
Yeah.
So, let's end with these ads, and and thank you so much for people who have been listening. So, massive thank you to sponsors John Catt, education publishers, for professional development, and we've talked loads about professional development alongside pastoral CPD tonight, and there are some absolutely outstanding teaching and learning books written by some incredible professionals. And if you use the code JCTTR2425, you'll get 20% off orders at John Catt, JOHNCATT bookshop.com. And our second ad is USA Study, students' opportunity to go and study in the US of A. So their website, usastudy.co.uk, has that one-stop platform, everything that you might want to know up-to-date resources, different information about different university programs, scholarships, you name it, tools, advice, timelines, templates. Check it out for students to have that opportunity to find out what it would be like to study in America. And finally, the one not to be missed, Saturday, 1st of March in Manchester, Teachers Talk Connect. Biggest free event ever. Join the Teachers Talk radio team here for some amazing stage speakers, Mr. P, Kate Jones, Vic Goddard, and of course, Beejesh, Deva. Deva or Deva?
Deva.
Deva, I got it right.
Yep.
I shouldn't tell me that. Loads of fantastic CPD sessions, amazing network opportunities. Tickets are free. ttradio.org to get yours. Thanks so much for everything tonight.
When are we back, Claire? When are we back?
That's good. This time next month. What date are we on?
12th of March. Yeah, 12th of March. Yeah. And come and say hello if you come to the TTR event. I'll be there, and we'll see you on the 12th of March.
Perfect. Great stuff.
Excellent.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye. Yeah, go to bed. Quick, go. Lie down. See you later.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.